I think most of us in the phone world, the tech space, know about Samsung's Exynos processors, right? They've been making these things for a really long time. And I don't know if it's because they don't want to be dependent upon Qualcomm. They don't want to be running a Dimensity chip. They want their own system on a chip that they can have full control over. Maybe they see what Apple's doing over there and they think, I want to do what they're doing. I want to control all of my hardware and really just have that kind of Apple level of strict control. But the thing is, their level of success has kind of been a little up and down. I think I can kind of distill down what their success has been with Exynos by saying that the S23 Ultra has been selling like absolute gangbusters, in particular in the markets that used to get the Exynos versions of phones, and it's because it's not the Exynos version of those phones, right? So in America, you'd pretty much always get the Snapdragon version. When you're watching the video reviews on the internet, MKBHD, Mr. Who's the Boss, Mr. Mobile, it's weird, there are two Misters that just came to mind. They're probably showing you the Snapdragon version, but over in India or maybe in the UK areas like that, they probably got the Exynos version. And for a long time, the Exynos versions were a little bit worse, right? The image processing pipeline wasn't as good. The battery life wasn't as good. The thermals, the performance were not as good. And with the S23 Ultra, not only did we get maybe the best Snapdragon processor of all time, it is also the case that everyone got, okay? The UK got it, India. Everybody got the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 instead of the Exynos, and I do believe that is a big part of why these phones, the S23 phones, are selling something like 70% better than the S22 line of phones. Now, all of that being said, we have a news story to talk about today from Sam Mobile. Samsung's Dream Exynos chip for Galaxy S25 could have an optimized AMD GPU. Reading that headline, I had a lot of thoughts. First off, we're talking about the 25, okay? So we just got to 23, so it means 24 is going to come in between. So theoretically, let's just assume and hope that the 24 will be still running the Snapdragon processor across the board. But if you thought that maybe Samsung was letting the Exynos fall by the wayside, they were leaving those days behind them, this might give you some pause for concern, because no, they are continuing to push forward with the Exynos, hoping to bring it back in a couple of years. And that is something you may or may not be very happy about, right? I just told you the 23 is selling really well overseas because it's not the Exynos. The idea of bringing the Exynos back might make you a little bit nervous, right? But then also, hey, a GPU that's been optimized by AMD, that's a pretty novel, interesting idea as well. According to a tipster that I honestly just heard of yesterday and just made a video talking about that I posted yesterday, Tech Reeve, which I think that their Twitter handle was like something very strange. I'm not going to remember it. Let's just go to their profile and look at it really quickly. Revegnus, something like that. Samsung and AMD are working together on a new GPU for the Exynos 2500, which is tentatively named, they say here. It will be based on AMD's Radeon technology as part of their extended partnership and will focus on optimization. Featuring on optimization rather than just raw performance might strike you as an interesting idea, but this Snapdragon, a big part of why people are so happy with it is because of how well optimized it is, how little power it seems to sip while still being quite powerful. These phones, the battery life improved dramatically with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. So maybe that's what they're thinking. Here, we need to get more efficient. We also have to factor in that, like I mentioned earlier, the Exynos chips have historically had worse optimization, worse efficiency than the Snapdragon chips. So maybe this is Samsung saying, hey, AMD, can you help us make our GPU be a bit better optimized? Because we do still want to pursue this goal of Apple-level hardware control, but we're just not getting there ourselves. We're not able to pull this off for whatever reason. One might come to this snap judgment that, Samsung, you should just stop with this Exynos nonsense. Did you not learn a very important lesson from the 23 phones? Just stick with Qualcomm and sell more phones. You don't need this level of hardware control, but clearly this is a goal that a lot of OEMs have in mind. Huawei, of course, has long been making their own, silicon, which they've had to really lean into with some of the trade bans and so forth. Their Kirin chips, I believe is what they were called. Of course, Google is doing the same thing, ironically, being built by Samsung, if I'm remembering correctly, are their Tensor chips, which they're about to be showing off a Tensor G3 this fall with the Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro. So there are good reasons clearly to pursue this, else these companies wouldn't all be pursuing it. But again, if I'm Samsung or if I'm just a really big Samsung fan and I'm in the UK, I'm reading headlines like that and I'm thinking, please don't. Please don't do this, Samsung. Just keep with the Qualcomm chips. I'm really happy with my Qualcomm S23 Ultra, and I would like to have a Qualcomm S25 Ultra when the time comes as well. But guys, I'd love to hear what you think about this in the comments down below. When you hear Samsung seemingly doubling down on Exynos in the future, does this make you cringe? Does this make you excited? How do you feel about this? Would you go back to an Exynos powered Samsung phone if you do live in those areas? Sound off in those comments down below. Hit that subscribe button before you go so you don't miss any more content just like this. I'll see you on the next one, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.